Welcome to episode 2 of the podcast. I'm Flash. With me today is my pops.
JRod.
He goes by JRod.
Or Pops, either one.
Whichever one.
Yeah.
So today we're just going to talk about a little bit everything kind of covering sports. So we got the Tour de France starting. When's that starting up?
It's starting next weekend. Yeah.
Next weekend. And is Vingegaard the favorite for that, or Pogačar?
Yeah, I think most people probably saying Pogačar this year just because of Vingegaard still really recovering from his crash earlier this year with some rib damage. So, yeah, I mean, he just hasn't been able to put the time in to the training. Similar to last year when Pogačar broke his wrist earlier in the year, knocked him out for a little while. And they thought that affected his performance last year. This year you got Vingegaard, Wout van Aert, another teammate, both suffering crashes. Remco Evenepoel, another favorite, suffered a crash. And the way Pogačar has looked early part of this year, especially the Giro in Italy, he's just super strong, got a strong team. But it's going to be interesting. You got 3 to 4 guys on different teams this year. Primož Roglič, who was with Vingegaard last year.
Oh, okay.
Different team this year. So it's going to be an exciting tour, I think.
Yeah. And so I know that you do some cycling, but, I'm sure everybody else might not know that. So I think I've heard you say that this year you feel the strongest, I guess, in your since you've retaken up cycling, or give us like a brief background on like your cycling career as far as years and whatnot.
So, started cycling right here in Richmond, Virginia. About maybe 30-something years ago. Long time ago.
Yep.
Started with the local group, RABA, Richmond Area Bicycling Association. Starting off on a ride that they call the ABC ride, Ashland Breakfast Club ride.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard of that one.
It was a good one. You'd get 50 to 100 people out there, all kinds of ranges, from moms and dads with their kids to racers.
Okay.
And it was pretty cool. Started off in a parking lot. You did 11 miles to the Hardee's in Ashland, and just bikes all over the lawn in Ashland. I mean, 50 people coming up in Ashland Hardee's all at one time.
That was the breakfast at Hardee's?
That was the breakfast.
I can't imagine it's too good of a breakfast there when you're on a bike.
I don't know. The cinnamon rolls were nice. And then you could just come straight back if you wanted to, self-paced. You just left when you wanted. I mean, everybody gathered at like 8 o'clock start. You could come straight back after breakfast, or it was kind of a informal, hey, what do you feel like doing today? Let's do an extra 20, 30, 40-mile loop. And then you just get with people that wanted to do that distance and speed, and that's how you kind of just branched out to increase your mileage. So started with that. Then, I was a police officer here in Richmond, and my partner and I heard that the Tour de Trump at the time was coming into Richmond, professional bicycle race right here in America.
Oh, okay.
So you have, Tour of France, right? Tour of Italy, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland. We had one right here. Of course, it couldn't be the Tour of America. It had to be the Tour de Trump because we're commercial here. So Trump put his name on it. They were coming into town. And I remember standing on the corner watching these guys just fly by me with colorful jerseys, bikes going zzz, and just 100 guys just flying by me. And we went downtown and saw the finish, and I was just hooked. I was hooked at that point. So I decided I wanted to get into that's all my friends texting me now. They see I'm on a podcast. They want to see what's going on. They want me to mention their names.
Said you made it big time.
Yeah. It was fun. And I decided to not only get into racing, but, being like we are, we kind of like the leaders. We just want to start things.
Right.
Decided to start a cycling team. And so got a couple police officer friends of ours together, 4 police officer friends, and then an attorney that was a good friend of ours, and then some other guy that was a friend of Billy's, and we formed like a six-man bicycle team.
Well, it's not bad.
Called
It's a pretty
ourselves
solid group.
called ourselves Team Force,
Okay.
and we started entering some local races. Traveled out as far as Virginia Beach and Tidewater area and Charlottesville and stuff, and just started entering bike racing. Gave it up for, when we moved. Gave it up for about 20, 25 years or so after I had some fellas, and you guys started getting into sports and started coaching. And then when we moved back to Virginia, about 25, 30 years later, dusted off the old bike, realized that everybody else had newer bikes. My bike was what they called a classic.
You didn't do any biking before you took up running, did you? Like when you were doing the marathon and whatnot?
No, when I did the marathon, no bike. The bike was, geez, I don't even remember where the bike was. I don't even know if we moved it from place to place or whether we kept it here. I can't even really remember.
And then you did the Spartan racing for a little while.
Yep, when we moved back to Virginia, the first thing I did was a marathon.
Yep, I remember that.
Because I hate running, and I decided, why not do a marathon since you hate running? It was painful every step. And then we did Spartan obstacle course racing, and still never did the bike until really I never got the bike back out until JD's final football game.
Oh, okay.
After he played his last game, you, Michael, JD, all were done. I announced to the board that I was retiring as a board member and coach, and 2 weeks later broke out the bike. And now pretty much riding. Now back in Richmond here, riding with the Rabba group again. Just started back with them last week. Probably did the hardest week of riding.
That's what I've heard.
Last week that I've done in 20 years, maybe.
And how many years you been back on the bike now? Was this like year 3 or 4?
I think this is year 3.
And do you think you're in the best shape, I guess, recently in your bike career, just because like you're entering year 3 after kind of shaking the dust off, or did you do anything different in your off season, or what do you think has made the difference this year?
Yeah, this year I think they say just you got your high volume guys out there and just saying put in the time, and so I think what made a difference for me was just time on the bike, increasing the frequency of getting out there, and then really trying to focus on building that aerobic engine,
Gotcha.
Zone 2 work.
Right.
Because I think the first year I got back and went out there, I'm like, well, I'm athletic. I did some Spartan races. I played basketball. I can hop back out on the bike and just go hard.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't really go hard. Obviously, you lose a lot of strength when you get older. Muscle, atrophy a little bit. Strength wasn't there. Cardiovascular conditioning wasn't there. But you just think mentally you can do it. So went out and just started riding too hard, and never really had that aerobic base engine.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I think over the last year, especially this winter, I was much more consistent in getting in the time on the bike. And since it was mostly indoor and I wasn't competing with the guys on the road,
right,
I didn't have to keep up with anybody.
Makes sense.
So I focused on, on the Zone 2 work, and I think that paid off coming into the spring. I probably came into this spring maybe better conditioned than I was the last couple of years.
I don't think a lot of people understand the power of like a dedicated aerobic building block, like where you are doing like Zone 2 building. Like, I would say that for the most part, a lot of people in whatever kind of exercise programs it be, whether it be, weightlifting or something like a field sport, everybody always does like a conditioning block, but I think a lot of conditioning blocks are just straight up garbage. It doesn't seem to necessarily do anything for most people. But if you take the time and do like what you did, a Zone 2 dedicated block, or where you're building that aerobic base, expanding the mitochondria in your body, it makes a big difference. At least and I noticed like this year, I kind of did a little bit different of a workout program where it was a pretty low intense for like 4 weeks, but did a lot of like aerobic conditioning. So I'd use like mouth taping for some lifts. Did a lot of stuff that was more like time driven rather than like reps and sets and kind of thing. And I've noticed a big difference that like my muscles just like don't fatigue out as much. Even as far as like sprinting and stuff like that, just don't necessarily get tired. And so I think it's probably the thing that most people are neglecting in their training plan when they're looking to take it to the next level. I guess a lot of people think, if they've got, let's say, a 60-mile bike ride coming up, they need to pack on the miles, or they need to do, high intense or high volume, but nobody's necessarily looking at increasing the work capacity through your VO2 max, your mitochondria, your aerobic base, and that kind of thing.
You think it's because building that aerobic base takes longer, right? So I can go out there and do a 4-week block of VO2, and I can increase a little bit, and high intensity training, you see some instant results with that,
right?
And I think people like that. Problem is, most people can't sustain that for long.
Yeah.
Even the professionals, you look at Pogača and Vingegaard and all that, when they do VO2 max blocks, high intensity training, they're doing 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 blocks of that, once or twice a year. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't sustain that sort of thing 52 weeks a year. And I think aerobic base building takes longer. Like I'm starting to see now in year 3, the work that I put in year 1 and 2,
right,
where I'm going out now and what was a zone 4 workout for me in year 1, I'm looking at like, this is a piece of cake. I can do this for 100 miles today.
For sure.
And that's not the high intensity work that was giving me that.
That's laying the groundwork
there. That's that mitochondrial work, VO2 max improvement, but you can get that with zone 2 workout just as much as you can get it with zone 4 or 5.
And some of the elites, like I guess I don't watch too much cycling other than the major tours that you have on, but in track, like a lot of the elite people that are looking for to win a gold medal, they're in a 4-year training block. Like you'll have racers, like last year wasn't an Olympic year, and so like if a world championship comes up and it doesn't correlate with like their training block for like the Olympic year, it's like they don't even care that it's like a world championship. Like some of them will compete, but they're not worried about like peaking at that specific time of year. Some of them just flat out like will not compete in the world championships because it doesn't correlate, and so that takes tremendous patience, like to understand that like you're on a 4-year training cycle there.
Yeah. How do you think people stay motivated for that?
Well, it definitely seems like it comes from like a lot of the younger, more patient athletes. Like I guess 2 of the ones that I've noticed that have been like that: Noah Lyles, the 100-meter runner, and then Sydney McLaughlin-Laverne, the 400-meter hurdler. I know they got pretty solid coaches. Sydney's coach is Bobby Kersey, and so he's been a track coach for longer than I've been alive. And so I think it probably comes from trusting your coach. It's hard to say without interviewing any of the athletes or coaches like that, but I would imagine if you are, somewhat of a new coach and you're taking somebody who wants to, be an Olympian, and you try telling them that, we're not going to peak this year, like we don't care about the world championship. If they don't have the resume behind them showing that, they've produced Olympians, I feel like that goes a long way.
Do you think like having that one event that you're thinking, like if it's an Olympic gold medal, that it's every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit easier when you have that 1 or 2 events that you're shooting for. Whereas some people, they don't want that delayed gratification, right? They can't think in long-term goals. Right. One of the questions that I ask my buddies that I ride with sometimes, because you have this in professional cycling, you've got your Tour de France winners, right? And then you've got your guys like a Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel, that they're never going to necessarily win the Tour de France, but they want more wins stages, right? Well, you got like Mark Cavendish, right? Mark Cavendish has won 35 stages
in the Tour
over
de France,
his career of Tour de France, but he's never will win the Tour de France. So I've asked my buddies, would you rather win the Tour de France once or win 35 individual races? So I guess it depends on your mindset.
I guess so.
I'm like, I want to win every time I go out there. I'm a 35 race winner.
Right.
I'm not going to do just my entire career training to never win a race individual, but to win the Tour de France overall. But I get that does motivate some people. So that's kind of like that Olympian,
Yeah. Well, there could be money in it as well because the sports like cycling and track, it ain't like football or basketball where you got $1 million contracts.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a decent sponsorship, well, even if you do have a decent sponsorship, they really don't pay much unless you're one of the top tier guys. Then they might pay for your travel arrangements and whatnot. But I guess a lot of people are counting on like prize money, and so that'll definitely get you burned out too. I think I can't remember where I saw it, but I looked at it last year on the difference between athletes, at least that self-reported, whether they cared about prize money or whether they cared, I guess, about like the end goal of the season, championships, and then the injury rate, and then like just the burnout rate was a lot more for the ones that cared about prize money. Because I guess I'm not sure what the difference is between how they peak or if they do multiple peaks within a season based on meets that are worth a little bit more prize money, but constantly having to, you're racing for your livelihood there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe it's just anybody that chases money, man. You just find out that that's an empty promise.
Yeah, it doesn't buy the happiness.
When you get it, it's just never enough.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's like, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's like an athlete that might play, NBA basketball for the money, or somebody who's out there to win championships.
Right.
You probably got some of both, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to turn down winning a championship, but you don't have those people with that drive. Like, like Brady, right? I will cut my salary to win a championship.
For the rings, yeah. And I feel like, I think I would be the same way if I was in the opportunity, if I was had a position where, could make a significant impact to the team. Dude, I'll take the league minimum if it means winning a championship. Like, I don't understand how these guys, like, even the quarterbacks, like, you're getting paid, whatever, $25 million a year. Somebody else gets signed for $35 million a year, and now the next time your contract's up, you want to be paid more than them just so you can say you make more than them. Like, that just blows my mind.
You didn't even win the championship.
Yeah. Like, I'm a Trevor Lawrence fan. Yeah, he likes to lick salt on the knees.
Dude, I can't take that.
Big salt guy.
Yeah.
Lay down.
Salty dog.
Lay down. But I'm a big Trevor Lawrence guy, and I think that while he has done decent on the Jaguars, he's only won one playoff game, and they just paid that man like $50 million a year on a contract extension. And, objectively, I don't think that he's worth $50 million a year.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw it, but they're talking about making a separate salary cap for quarterbacks in the NFL that doesn't affect the rest of the salary cap, just because they're getting so out of control. Yeah, because the salary cap, I think it's like something like maybe like $235 million a year for the whole team. I know they increase it every year, but your quarterbacks are making like almost like a quarter of that.
Yeah. Wow.
And like none of them even like win championships. It's like every time you hear about a quarterback becoming the next highest paid quarterback in the league, like,
right.
It ain't Mahomes. Well, Mahomes did sign his one contract, but like, Jalen Hurts made one Super Bowl. Matt Ryan made one Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo, he didn't make like any Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers won MVPs, no Super Bowls. Josh Allen can't beat Mahomes. Flacco might have got his contract after he won the Super Bowl. Yeah, so that one makes sense.
Then went downhill after that.
Yeah, but like recently, all of the quarterbacks
before they were winners.
They show potential, but it's what are you paying me to win one playoff game a year?
Seems like they're paying for stats now.
I guess.
I mean, it's a pay for performance league, or sports is theoretically. What are you paying for in performance? Statistical, accomplishments during a season, or somebody that has that intangible that just win.
Yeah, and I guess they pay them so they don't go somewhere else, since quarterback's the most prized position in the league, but it's getting out of control.
Yeah, it's I think you got to have that support team around you, though. I mean, obviously Brady, you watched his speech. He's talking about, how really the offense sometimes didn't even pull their weight.
Yeah.
He's saying, right, the defense kind of got him there.
Yeah, there was several years where the defense was definitely holding it down for that team.
And Patrick Mahomes, look at his performance when Kelsey ain't in the game.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of team performance that goes into making these quarterbacks that successful, and it doesn't seem like it's shared among the rest of the teammates.
No, definitely not. Certainly not. A little bit different sport. We should think about Caitlin Clark and the state of the WNBA.
Yeah, well, I didn't know anything about Caitlin Clark until, maybe the last couple of months of college basketball.
Right.
And, John, JD, I call him, texted me one day. He was over at Kansas, watching the game. And he texted me, he says, you watching this game? And I said, no. He says, you got to flip it over, man. Caitlin's just like lighting it up.
Yeah.
So I switched it over. As soon as I switched it over, I mean, she's throwing up Steph Curry 3-pointers.
Yeah, she shoots deep threes.
And then I thought her passing was really sharp too. Her placement, her play when she didn't have the ball, was really good. So I ended up watching that game, and then watching a couple of more games after that to watch her play. So she got me watching college women's basketball when I never really watched it before. And so I think it's a great story, for women's sports, certainly. And I think, people like that can help draw people that haven't been regular viewers into that sport, both men and women alike,
For sure.
old and young. So I like that. Then she goes pro, and I'm hearing some, she's having a little bit difficult time sometimes, maybe, with some of the other players. I haven't really dug into it a lot.
Taking cheap shots left, right, and center.
I did see a couple of those, rough shots. Now, is she the only rookie that has come into the league and taken cheap shots? I don't know. Right. Honestly, I'll tell you, I don't know, because I haven't watched women's, the WNBA.
Fair enough.
I'm hearing it now because of her popularity. But, when Dawn Staley came in and some of these others that played, years ago, did they face some of that same, abuse or roughness when they came into the league? Were people already not liking them when they came into the league? Were they rivals? I don't know. Don't know if that was happening or not. But either way, I would say Caitlin and who's the girl is it?
Angel Reese.
Angel. The whole
Caitlin the LSU
Angel
girl
thing
they got
is
a little
good
rivalry
for the NBA.
Yeah, they played today actually. They both put up like pretty solid double doubles. I think Caitlin Clark had maybe like 20-something points, like 18 assists, and Angel Reese had like 35 and then 18 rebounds or something like that.
Yeah,
so
I think Angel's got like 6 games in a row, double, 7 games.
This one now I think makes it 8 or so. Yeah, she said I can't remember if it was a WNBA record or a WNBA rookie record for most double doubles in a row.
So yeah, it's good for the sport. It's going to get people watching it. I just hope that the two of them, especially, can get to the point where it's more like a Larry Bird, Magic Johnson respectful rivalry,
right?
And where one of them's not out to take the head off of the other one, in a physical way. I don't like to see that if that's what's going on, but I don't know. You know more about what's going on. With that?
Well, I know like in college, at least like 2 years ago when LSU beat Iowa, that's when Angel Reese was like talking smack to Caitlin Clark and was like tapping the ring finger and whatnot. I think they I mean, Caitlin Clark's like, she's cool as a cucumber. Like she's pretty poised for a Gen Z girl these days. Right. Like she don't care what people say about her. She don't care that people are roughing up. Like,
and I've seen
she definitely has like the mentality that you would want from somebody in her position.
She's having fun with it.
But I haven't seen any direct beef between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese this year, at least. I'm not sure what's going to be on SportsCenter tonight after they play, and then just throwing in there when the Caitlin Clark's team came to play in DC, they actually switched it from the arena that they play the women's basketball games in to the where the Wizards play, because that many people they sold out the women's arena, so they moved it to the men's. Yeah, I think I could have the number wrong, but I thought it was like 35,000 like people or something like that went to go see that show. Yeah,
it's definitely good for women's sports, and the girls got some skills. I mean, I have seen a couple of women basketball players come up from college and go pro that are quite skilled. Yeah, but I have not seen a pure shooter like that can just pull up quickly.
I think it'd be cool to see. I know the seasons don't overlap, but like for like the NBA All-Star game or whatever, like have WNBA and NBA like All-Stars, like a co-ed team. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting, especially if they're looking, had NBA helping to generate some support and viewership for the WNBA. It is kind of odd that you don't see them doing anything jointly.
Yeah, the only thing I think, and I think it was the first time they had it this year. For the NBA 3-point contest, they had Sabrina Ionesco, the women's basketball player. She competed against Steph Curry
Oh, really?
in the 3-point contest. Yeah, and she almost beat him. Like, she put up a lot that most people thought was going to win, but then Curry did the Curry thing and won it. I think on the half court shot or the buzzer beater at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was pretty wild.
It's interesting. Yeah, I tell you what, the quality of play in women's sports has certainly elevated to a high level in the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. I just hope that that rivalry or any other rivalry, turns into one of mutual respect with the two players.
Yeah, I think that's what people would want, a respectful rivalry there. What do you think the future of like sports performance is? Like, how there's always like a fad or like the next thing coming. Like, I guess recovery seems to be a big thing right now. That I guess kind of gets pushed by everything. You got like Whoop straps that'll measure your heart rate variability, give you a score and everything. Almost everybody's selling some type of red light therapy, massage gun device, the compression boots, that kind of thing. What do you see as next?
Yeah. I kind of, I don't know if the recovery thing is new or not. What do you think of this? Because I think way back in the old days, in the Arnold Schwarzenegger days, when steroids were crazy with bodybuilders and stuff, it was really about recovery, right?
Well, I was not alive during that time, so
I think really the whole steroid thing usage with even like the Bulgarians and the Russians with the powerlifters and all that, it wasn't really to grow your muscles. I mean, like the injection
I got what you mean.
Grow your muscles stronger. Or bigger,
it just healed them up faster, so you can work out more.
Recover faster, so you can stimulate that growth more frequently.
Yeah, so, and that's pretty much why every professional athlete uses them. Nobody that's like a professional athlete aside from bodybuilders is using steroids to get necessarily stronger or bigger these days. It's pretty much all about recovery. Like, I think most of the time when you see somebody pop, it's for like Ostarine, which isn't necessarily a steroid, but it's like it's a SARM that's like a synthetic thing that essentially like heals injuries faster.
So I think it's what I like about the focus on recovery now, with some of the cryotherapy and just the different things that people are doing. It just seems like a healthier choice to me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Than old school recovery methods. And
other than just sitting in an ice bath after practice.
Yeah, and it's just making people much more aware that longevity in sports. Whether it's the number of years you play or the number of games you play within a season, it's all about your staying healthy and recovering. And I know you're doing some work on that. I think with Cal and some of the things you're doing, where you're talking to coaches and saying, I can help you keep your athletes healthier during the season, so they're accessible to you. Can get minutes on the field or the court, and that makes a big difference. So that's all about what? That's got to be about the recovery.
Yeah, I guess recovery and just like the athlete monitoring systems. Like, I guess technology is like a big thing right now, at least in like college and professional athletics. Like, there's equipment like something called a 1080 Quantum. It's basically a Smith machine with a computer attached to it, and it'll show you like velocities and stuff like that. And so you'll do like a specific lift on there until you can't hit a certain velocity, opposed to doing like a set of like repetitions or something like that. Or at the end of your set, you'll either do like a fly 10-meter run or like a vertical jump, and then you stop once you have like a 5% drop off, that kind of thing. So a lot of it is like athlete monitoring, like while in practice. But I think like that's probably the hardest thing to track, is whether your systems actually have an effect or not. Like, I guess overall you can measure it. Like, since Cal's been at University of Minnesota, in his 24 years, I think he said there's been zero soft tissue injuries in his weight room. So like obviously that's like a tangible thing you can keep track of.
Like a muscle tear or something?
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody getting injured like in the weight room, that kind of thing. But I just mean as far as like wear and tear on an athlete as their season goes on. I don't know if there's necessarily a way that you can measure the wear other than what's like self-reported, like somebody saying my hamstring's starting to bother me, and then it turns into a repeat issue.
I guess the only measurement would be games missed or minutes played. And I know that can depend on the situation. Are you blowing out the team, or is it a close game or whatever? But games missed due to
that's a big one.
Number of days on a DO
right. Yeah.
list that could be a measurement potentially.
And that's what I don't understand. Like I feel like NBA strength and conditioning coaches or performance coaches or whatever, like it seems like they got a lot of non-contact issues in the NBA. Now, I know it's a pretty, it's a hard sport because it's a lot of running, a lot of plyometrics on a hard surface. 82 games, you're playing 3 or 4 games a week. But, I mean, the amount of, injuries that dudes get nowadays where, somebody leaves the game for hamstring tightness, somebody leaves the game for back tightness. Like, I don't know what that's all about. But, that seems to, in my mind, there's an easy way to get rid of that. Like, I had a client when I was working at One Life, baseball player. He worked out with me every Friday and always had AAU tournaments for baseball on the weekend. He came in and his dad was like, yeah, we might not work out today because he hurt or he strained his back swinging. We're not sure if he's going to be able to play tomorrow. So I just scrapped what I had on the plan for him that day. We had a whole bunch of different things as far as some soft tissue work, loosen him up a little bit, some movement pattern sequences. So I believe it was his lower right lat that was bothering him, and he was a right-handed thrower, right-handed batter. So obviously he was going to have to use that. So we did a lot of things in length. So I had him doing various exercises with the lat fully lengthened. Had him do a couple different mobilities and isometric holds, and it was an hour-long session. By the end of the hour, he said he felt like there was no injury anymore, and he played the whole tournament. I think he hit 3 home runs or something like that. So I don't know why there's not more of an individualized approach when it comes to training athletes like that. Because even in a sport like basketball, where you've only got 12 dudes on the team for the most part, and even though you've got different positions, everybody pretty much does the same job. It's not like football, where you've got a big offensive lineman and a cornerback or anything like that. But just because they play the same position, I think that there's different ways to train people. And this is something I learned from DC United's performance coach. He said that he places his athletes into buckets kind of based on what they need. So he does testing on them. And if somebody, the way that he does test is a series of jumps, and it shows whether you either excel in maximal strength, explosive ability, or reactive ability. And so his training approach for the soccer players there is different based on what their weaknesses are. And that seems like something that, to me, that is lacking in the field, where I don't know if people are necessarily training to bring up other people's weaknesses. And that seems like it would probably be the best injury prevention to me, if you train the weak link.
That makes sense. In cycling, we would diagnose that by if you can't hang with the rest of the group, right? Whether it's flats or hill or whatever. We need to determine, is it legs or lungs?
Right.
You can't treat everyone the same.
Yeah.
Right. So you might your legs might fail you before your lungs, or your lungs are failing before your legs.
Yeah.
Then that determines what you need to train. That's the weak link.
Yeah. If a dude can cycle forever with the legs, but he's getting winded, having him hit more legs or more intense workouts ain't going to do nothing for him.
No.
He's going to need an aerobic block or something.
Yeah, that's a big aerobic block there.
So, but I talk to a decent amount of strength coaches, but not necessarily their philosophy on what they're training with their teams. But that might be why nobody wants to pay for a strength coach in the country. I think I told you that University of North Carolina is looking for a full-time strength coach, 40 hours a week, paying $10.62 an hour, when you can go to Jimmy John's on campus and get paid more than that.
Oh man.
Or even other jobs like the one I was looking at in Fort Lewis, that's in Durango, Colorado, expensive mountain town. They're paying like $30K out there, and that's basically a full-time job. So it's like nobody wants to pay for these jobs, and it's.
Why do you think that is?
I think that the people that are hiring don't necessarily see the importance in it, and I mean, to be honest, I don't necessarily see the importance in it. Like, as a whatever you want to call it, strength and condition coach, performance coach. I think there's too many people in the field that have their own egos and see that like the weight room is like their field, and think that like their way is the best way. Like, obviously there's more than one way to skin a cat. Like, there's a million different strength coaches. Everybody probably has a different philosophy than one another. So obviously there's more than one way that you can peak an athlete, but I think that they use their own parameters. So like a lot of times, and specifically like in football weight rooms, you've got the tests, like we're going to test your squat, your bench, and then your clean. All those things are good, and yes, like strength and the explosiveness has its place in a sport like football, but even if you increase those numbers over the course of the season, like what did you do to make the team better? Mm-hmm. And so like something that like I have, like as far as my assessments, what I would do for a team is like completely different. Like I don't care if somebody's squat goes down like 20 pounds in a season. Like let's say I'm working with like a hockey player or somebody, and we do his max squat testing before the season, and then after the season goes down 20 pounds. But what if his time on the ice, like they do different kind of essentially like shuttle runs on the ice. What if that went down like a significant amount? That's a lot more important than a squat on the ice. So I think there's a big disconnect between the performance coaches having their own metrics, which yes, they're successful at improving those metrics, but what is that doing to improve the ability of the team?
I got you. So you think like especially in football, they're very concerned about the squat and the bench press.
Football is still old school. Football strength and conditioning gets paid the most of like any position, and I would say they do like the least amount of like specialization stuff.
It's like everybody thinks that the Philadelphia Eagles, 4th and 1 with Jalen Hurts is because he can squat 600 pounds.
Yeah,
forget the
pretty much
all-star center.
One of the greatest centers of all time.
Or the fact that they're pushing him from behind.
Yeah, or wedging together.
Or it's a silent snap a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about the squat.
Yeah, it ain't the 600-pound squat. Right. But, yeah, I just think that I think that you could probably do a lot with different teams, whether you incorporate some recovery methods like who's the British cycling coach that did the law of marginal gains?
Yeah, Brailsford.
Yeah, like I think like that's kind of my approach to stuff.
David Brailsford.
I'm big into doing my own testing on whether it be supplements, workout regimes, exercise programs, so I can kind of know like what works or what it feels like and whatnot. So in terms of like your recovery, now I know it might be hard to get like athlete buy-in with certain things like outside of their sport, like lifestyle kind of things, whether it be food choices or not. But let's say if you had a whole team that was going to do whatever you said, you had them on an anti-inflammatory diet, you had them getting a minimum of 8 hours of sleep a day, you had them getting sunlight for at least like 30 minutes to an hour a day, you had them taking certain supplements like L-glutamine or let's say like tart cherry juice or something. Even if those things only increase their performance 1%, if you have them doing 10 different things, that's a 10% increase on their recovery or overall livelihood. So it's like that's kind of, and I guess that's more of a holistic approach, but that's kind of like my mindset behind it.
That's a good point because Brailsford, with his theory of the aggregation of marginal gain,
right,
was doing things like that. He's the first one that had traveling chefs with the team. We're going to control what you eat. He had them bring their own pillows and blankets because nobody sleeps better.
Yeah, with your own pillow and blanket. That's true. Yeah, I got me like $100 pillow cube. I love that thing.
Yeah, and then just different things with the clothing. Make this just a fraction lighter and make this a little more wind resistant. And does that make a difference? Well, again, going back to the Tour de France, right? You're talking 23 stages. I mean, these guys are out there for over 100 hours,
Yeah.
right? And the winner might win by less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I can't even do the math right now, but that's less than 1%.
5 out of 60, that's 12, so that's like 8% out of 100. Yeah, so that's 0.08%.
Yeah, so less
5
than
minutes.
1% difference is all they need, right? And the guys that are doing some of these other things, they're just looking for a 1% edge. Even the illegal stuff that these guys are doing to enhance their performance, it's increasing it by 1%.
Makes a huge difference.
The difference in 1%. If you're talking about tacking on 1% plus 1% plus 1%, I don't even know if that. I don't think that 1 plus 1 plus 1. I think that's like,
I think it compounds. Yeah. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 9.
Exactly. So I think that does make a difference. And I think the future of performance is going to be understanding that, especially as we get smarter with, our artificial intelligence and the different things that people are doing, the Moneyball thing,
right?
As far as analyzing certain things. And then like you said, well, what if I combine this with 30 minutes of sun, and an El Gloomy, or a 30-minute walk in the morning.
Yeah. Or even if it affects like the mentality, like the sunlight thing, like, mostly for me, that's like a mood booster kind of thing. So that's focused more on like the mentality of the athletes, because when you feel good, you play good.
Right.
And I even go as far as like when I lead like sessions with like kids or whatnot, if they want to do something like completely different than what I had planned, if it's within reason, like sure, by all means, like let's go ahead, because like and that's kind of one thing that I guess I do in warm-ups, which is pretty popular in the Midwest. I kind of thought that I was the only person that did it like when I was here on the East Coast training, but Midwest, they use like a lot of games for like warm-up routines. So like like over, instead of doing like, let's say your hip swings, high knees, lunges, like every kid is familiar with that as a warm-up routine, but how many kids are like taking that seriously? Like you just get through the 10-minute warm up. What if instead of the warm up you were like, all right, we're playing ultimate football for 20 minutes?
That's what I did my entire coaching youth football.
Yeah, you've got a dynamic warm up where kids are moving around. Right. They're increasing their heart rate. They're increasing body temperature. You've got a competitive atmosphere. Yeah. You've got a team building atmosphere.
I've had parents on the sidelines watch. When we were splitting the field, and one team is training over there and I'm training over here, and they got them laying on the ground doing 6 inches with their legs and these little stretches and 1, 2, 3, the
bear crawls and burpees and all that.
I'm over there doing ultimate football, and parents are like, well, aren't you going to warm up your kids? Aren't they going to, aren't you worried about injuries or whatever? I was like, I don't know. How many years did I coach youth football? I never had a kid injured.
Yeah, dude, they're 8. They're not going to pull a hamstring.
I never had a kid pull a hamstring or anything like that. I never had a kid, obviously you have injuries. There's impact injuries or rolling your ankle. Warming up ain't going to help with that. Ultimate football, playing games and just like 3-on-3s. I would even break them up, warming up. Here, you got a mini size field, and it's going to be 3-on-3 over here and 3-on-3 over there.
Yeah.
5 minutes. I made them go for 5 minutes. Blew the whistle. They took a minute break. 5 minutes again. We switched teams. Not only was that warming them up, but it did 2 other things for me. It helped them to warm up. It helped develop their skills because they were warming up in a way that I was trying to develop skills. And then I got to assess them.
Yep.
Right. So it was really great from a scouting standpoint too. I could come out of the preseason with a pretty clear understanding of who was going to be playing in what position.
Yeah, for sure. That's another thing I was going to add. When you do have the dynamic environments, like I guess like commercial gyms are like big on their assessments, overhead squat assessment, functional movement screen, like all that nonsense. Like, dude, let's just put kids in a field and have them run around. Like I can tell you what they're good at and what they're bad at.
Yeah, you can go to any elementary school playground right now.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
None of them blowing hamstrings out over there either.
No.
Yeah, I think sometimes we complicate things a little bit too.
Definitely. Much. That's kind of like one of the things, like I think I told you before, where like I posted something that said like my wasted time exercises, and one of them was kettlebell swings. And I had this one coach, he was like, well, how are you going to prepare your sprinters for like the demands on the hamstring for sprinting, I was like, I'm gonna have them sprint. Like it's easy. Like I'm not gonna do kettlebell swings for that. Like if they need to bulletproof their hamstrings to sprint, like I'm gonna have them sprint.
And let me ask you this, Coach: are you taking the kettlebells to the track meet with them and helping them warm up with kettlebell swings?
I sure hope not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
How are you gonna have them warm up? What they're gonna be running?
Yeah, pretty much. So, but I think that's the overarching theme in at least the field that I'm in. That too many coaches see the weight room as their sport and improving performance in the weight room, and just kind of get in that, and not necessarily like a bad ego sense, like a cockiness to them, but just they get too engulfed in like the strength and conditioning and less into the improving performance of that. Like you're pretty much an afterthought. Like you're not the main sport coach. So it's like, basketball team is going to have basketball practice. They're going to have basketball games. The last thing basketball players want to do is come in the weight room and squat heavy.
Right.
If you find a basketball player that wants to squat heavy, let me know, because I haven't met any yet.
Yeah, and I don't think they want to do that.
And it's like, do basketball players need to squat heavy? Like Allen Iverson, or we'll use John Morant, a current player. John Morant, like he looks like he's like JD size. Like obviously he's a little bit bigger, but he might be like, I don't know, 6'3", 190. And not a knock to him, but I bet you he can't squat 300 pounds, but dude can jump over a 7-footer when he's dunking.
Yeah.
So bench press, like, what do I care if with somebody bench press is like the most arbitrary like lift that there is.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's certainly a difference in the body composition and the focus on weightlifting from when I was, younger, watching the basketball players growing up. I mean, you look at your defensive ends in football back, in the 70s. You look at your basketball players even back in the 80s, I think, and look at them now. I mean, these guys now, they all look like they're bodybuilders.
Yeah, the defensive ends are definitely crazy. Like Nick Bosa, like that dude's like straight up jacked, and he's a defensive end.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the basketball players, with shoulders that were bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger's.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I don't know that they're any better. I mean, they're not shooting any more accurately, I don't think. They're not necessarily playing with the longevity. I think the average NBA player today is playing a whole lot less number of games and years than they were back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, longevity definitely seems like it's going down. Like, what's the average age for an NFL running back? Is it under 2 years now? The average
NFL player is like 5. I'm not sure what the running backs.
Yeah, it's probably a skewed stat. I guess like for somebody who made like a starting running back spot, what the average age is. I think it used to be like 2.5 years or something like that, but. It used to seem like teams had you draft a running back, you keep him for his whole 8-10 year career.
And you ran him 20 plus times a game.
Yeah. Nowadays, teams got 2 or 3 running backs, and, they're out of the league in like 5 years.
Few runners are running the ball 20 times a game.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
That's about it. Well, you got anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's, been good talking about where sports have come and where it's going. So it was good being with you guys today. John's a little busy today, so I filled in for him.
Yup. All right.
So hopefully we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys again. Thanks for having me.
Yup. Appreciate you checking into the Culture Corner.